Hey guys, this is Samitha Sankara, a junior at Arjuco High School in Charlotte, North Carolina, and today's video is going to be about advanced substructure techniques. So you already learned about the internal substructure that you should be using within your body paragraphs of the speech, but this video is going to add a little bit more tricks and tips to what you can use during your speech to make you sound more experienced and more like you know what you're talking about. So the first one we're going to talk about is a second significant statement. Now, typically your conclusion should not be more than 30 to 45 seconds because you don't have time to really plan it out and you want it to just be a direct restatement of your question, your answer, and your 3 tags. But adding a second significant statement right before you state your question again could reinforce to your judge that you really understand the broad significance of why you're answering this question in the first place and why your answer is so important. So it's basically pretty much like the significant statement that you do in your introduction. Like you might say, because so-and-so conflict not only affects American taxpayers at home, but also the individual lives of the innocent civilians within so-and-so country, it's imperative that we ask ourselves today's questions, and so on and so forth. So you just reword that significance and try to make it transition from your third point into your conclusion by saying your significant statement and then, therefore, it's imperative that we ask ourselves today's question. And then say the question, answer, and then go back to your 3 tags. Another trick that you can use is using analogies. And analogies are just what you probably think they are, just a comparison between 2 ideas. And they can become really useful in Extemp when you're trying to explain a complex idea to your judge. So, for example, let's say you're talking about India's infrastructure and their electricity system. So you could use the analogy of a river. Just like a river has a main source at one point, like near a mountain, and it spreads out into tributaries and then it starts to dry off towards the end, India's electricity system is only centered in a couple main hubs, and then as it spreads out closer to the rural areas, it kind of dries out and there's not much access to electricity in those rural areas. So by making analogies like this, not only does it make it clearer to your judge what you're trying to say, just the fact that you use the analogy makes you sound really smart. And you can use the simplest of analogies. They don't have to be elaborate. They can just be a quick couple of references. For example, if you were talking about a certain problem and why a certain solution wouldn't work to that problem, you can just use the quick reference to, it's like you putting a Band-Aid over the wound instead of actually healing the wound itself. Something like that, just something quick and easy that it shows your judge that you're critically thinking about what you're saying and that you can draw connections like that. And the final thing that we're going to talk about is rewording your tags and your question within your speech. Now, what this does is show your judge really clearly that yes, you are answering the question. And this is especially helpful with judges who aren't particularly writing down your argument and they seem to be sitting there and listening to you attentively. If you reword your question and your tags as you're going along within your substructure, then it'll make it really clear and evident to the judge. And there's no question at all whether you actually answer the question or not. And this is really important considering the #1 rule in Extemp is to answer the question. So if your question was something like, is Narendra Modi a good prime minister for India? And your answer is yes. And then your first point is about how he's really focused on revitalizing India's infrastructure. Then within that point itself, as you're going on into your BISA point and the impacts, you want to relate it back and remind the judge that because Narendra Modi is reprioritizing the focus of the government's agenda and the budget on revamping India's infrastructure, it is clear that he's very focused on bringing up India's economy and is therefore a very effective prime minister in India. And see how I'm using the same words and the rhetoric of the question and my tag. It's reinforcing that idea that I have a unified analysis and I'm very clear and straightforward in my focus. Your goal is to make your speech as easy for the judge to understand as possible. So by doing these quick little things, you can make yourself sound a lot more experienced and like you know what you're talking about, and they'll definitely impress the judge. So good luck with Extemp, and I hope you have a great tournament.